I never thought one day I would sit here, writing my own story, the story of a love that lasted nearly a decade, and the betrayal that ruined it all. If someone told me 9 years ago that one day I would stand at a crossroads in life, leaving the girl I loved more than myself, I would have laughed in their faces. But this is reality, a harsh reality that took me a long time to accept. I met Elena during my first year of university in Paris, when I had just entered software engineering. At that time, I was a young man with passion but not too interested in love, and she was a theater and film student with the dream of shining on the big screen. We met by chance at a small coffee shop near campus. That day, it was raining lightly and the restaurant was so crowded that I had to find a seat with someone. Elena was sitting alone, focusing on writing some script in her notebook. I asked permission to sit with her. She looked up slightly, smiled gently, and said, "As long as you don't bother me." But I was bothered. I couldn't resist the charm of the girl in front of me. Elena is not the type of girl who is dazzlingly beautiful, but there is something very special about her deep brown eyes, slightly curly hair tousled by the rain, and something very artistic, very sincere. We started talking, and strangely enough, Elena was the complete opposite of me, but made me feel comfortable from the first moment. She is dreamy and flighty, while I am practical and somewhat rigid. But it's that difference that fascinates me. I love the way she looks at the world in a unique way, always finding beauty in the little things: a falling yellow leaf, a steaming cup of coffee, or street music playing on the corner of Montmartre. We started dating not long after that. The college years passed with evenings doing homework together in the library, walks around the Seine River, and endless conversations about dreams and the future. Elena said that she just wants to be a normal actress. Doesn't need to be famous, just needs to stand on stage and live with her character. I believe her. And I loved her the way a young man loves, wholeheartedly, without doubt, without guard. After graduation, we moved in together in a small apartment in central Paris. I found a good job with a stable salary in the software industry, and Elena continued to pursue her acting dream. In the early days, life was very simple but full of joy. We don't have much money, but we have each other. That's the most important thing. Elena is a terrible cook, but she still tries to make dinner for me after days when I come home late from work. I remember the times we watched old movies together. She watched and analyzed every actor's expression, while I could only laugh and tease. "Do you watch movies or do you learn a trade?" She glared at me, but then laughed. I love that smile, love that person, and I believe that my life will forever go with her. On a romantic autumn day in Montmartre, I proposed to Elena. It wasn't a lavish proposal with candlelight and violin music. It was simply the two of us sitting on the steps overlooking the city, me pulling the ring from my coat pocket and saying, "I don't know what the future holds, but I want you in it." Elena looked at me, tears sparkling in her eyes, then nodded slightly. I think it was the happiest day of my life. I was wrong. After the engagement, Elena began to change, but I didn't realize it at the time. She wants to improve herself before getting married, which sounds reasonable. She started going to the gym, eating healthier, and taking better care of her appearance. I support her wholeheartedly because I think it's normal. But then, things are no longer normal. Elena makes friends with a new group: actors, directors, models, influencers. She spends more time at the gym than at home, constantly talking about improving herself, changing her style, and enhancing her image. At first, I was happy that she was motivated, but then she started criticizing me. "Lucas, you should change a bit. You still dress like you did when you were a student. Don't you get bored? Why don't you try going to the gym?" Successful people always have to have good looks. The jokes gradually turned into serious criticism. I didn't realize when Elena no longer looked at me with loving eyes, but instead with judgment. One evening, when I came home late from work, Elena was not at home. She texted, "I'm having dinner with friends. Don't wait, but I don't know who you are." Elena no longer shares her life with me. I told myself it was probably just a period of change, but something in my heart said the storm was coming. I don't know when our love started to disappear, but I'm about to find out the answer, and it will be more painful than anything I ever imagined. I used to think that when you love someone long enough, you can notice every little sign when they change. But I was wrong, not because I didn't see the signs, but because I intentionally ignored them. But the truth has its own way of forcing us to face it. In the months after our engagement, a little more each day, Elena was no longer the girl I once loved. She becomes obsessed with her appearance, not just eating healthy or hitting the gym, but her entire being caught up in a never-ending race to be perfect. Before, Elena used to love simple things. She likes walking around Paris in the evening, enjoying a strong cup of espresso, and reading books in a small roadside shop. But now, everything that revolves around her must have a purpose. She no longer walks because she likes it. She goes because she needs to burn enough calories for the day. She no longer eats freely whatever I cook. She stares at the ingredients and says, "Lucas, do you know how much sugar is in this? It will make you look bloated on camera." At first, I thought this was just a phase. I told myself that she was just trying for her career. But then, the changes don't just stop at eating or exercising. Elena started to show her displeasure with me. "Lucas, don't you think you should be more careful? People look at you and me. You look better and better, but I stay the same." I laughed it off, trying to see it as a joke, but the teasing continued. "Have you ever thought about changing your style? Wear these boring polo shirts forever? Are you thinking about going to the gym? We can practice together. Look at Sophia's boyfriend. He knows how to build an image." Sophia, Elena's new friend, a TV actress with hundreds of thousands of followers on social networks. She has everything Elena desires: fame, recognition, and a life of luxury. I realized Elena was starting to want more than what we had. Elena stopped living her life, she started performing it. Everything must be documented on social media. If we go out to eat, we must choose a luxury restaurant to have a beautiful angle. If we go on a trip, there must be a video to post on the story. If I buy her a gift, I have to take a photo to show it on Instagram. At first, I didn't notice, but gradually I realized that Elena no longer enjoyed the moments with me. She only cared about whether the moment was beautiful enough to post. I tried to remind her, "Elena, do you think you're paying too much attention to social media?" She shrugged. "I don't understand anything. This is how people build personal brands now." What is personal brand? I just want a partner, not someone who is trying to sell his image to the world. But I still tried to endure, because I love her. Everything came to a climax one summer night. Elena had a party with a group of actress friends and invited me to come along. I don't like these kinds of parties, but I went anyway because she wanted to. But from the moment I walked in, I felt like I didn't belong there. Everyone there was from the entertainment industry, dressed smartly, talking about film projects, advertising contracts, and followers on Instagram. They looked at me like I was an outsider, nothing worth paying attention to. Elena completely ignored me. She was busy laughing and talking with other men who could help her advance her career. I stood there, lost in a room full of people. Then, I heard her say something that I will never forget. "My life has changed a lot this year. I feel like I've moved to a new level, and now I have a lot of options for the future. Select. I am no longer her certainty. I am just one of several options." That night on the way home, I drove in silence. Elena was still scrolling through her phone, smiling at new messages from her friends. I asked her, "Do you still consider me your future?" Elena stopped scrolling through her phone, looked at me for a second, then shrugged. "Lucas, who knows what the future holds?" I don't say anything more, but my heart clenched. In the days that followed, the distance between us became even wider. Elena spends a lot of time out, rarely coming home. One time, I saw her texting with a certain man, named Antoine. I asked her, and she just laughed. "Don't be jealous. Antoine is the director. We were just talking about work, but I'm not stupid anymore." I started researching, and what I discovered shocked me. Elena signed a fake marriage contract with Antoine to get citizenship and the chance to star in a big movie. She told Antoine that I was just an ex-boyfriend, someone she hadn't gotten over yet. Her messages with Sophia showed that they had discussed this plan beforehand. She was using me as a safety cushion until things settled down. I can't believe it. The girl I loved for 9 years, the one I proposed to, betrayed me in a way that couldn't be more cruel. That night, I didn't go home. I knew I couldn't take it anymore. I'm about to cancel it all, and I won't regret it. I always think that when two people love each other long enough, nothing can break that relationship. But I was wrong. It's not time, it's not memories, it's greed that decides everything. I've loved Elena for almost a decade, but that doesn't mean she loves me the way I love her. And I only realized that truth when it was too late. After learning that Elena had a fake marriage contract with Antoine, I couldn't sit still. I want to confirm the truth. I wanted to know if I was really just a backup plan. I contacted Matthew, a mutual friend of ours, who had warned me about Elena's change. I asked directly, "Matthew, do you know what happened between Elena and Antoine?" Matthew hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "Lucas, I think you should know the truth. Elena discussed this with Sophia before. Not only did she register a fake marriage with Antoine, but she also planned to leave you when everything was settled." I was stunned. "Are you sure?" Matthew was silent for a moment, then sent me a file. "I don't intend to interfere in your affairs, but I can't ignore seeing you being taken advantage of." I opened the file. Inside was a screenshot of the message between Elena and Sophia. The words seemed to pierce my heart. "Antoine is ready to sign the contract. I just need to wait a few more months, and I can escape this boring life. Lucas is good, but he doesn't fit my new image. I need someone with more stature. I just need to keep him there until everything is certain." I sat in front of the screen, feeling like something was broken in my chest. We have been together for 9 years. We used to dream about a wedding. Yet for her, I'm just a temporary stop before finding a better place. Or not. I cannot accept this. I decided to face Elena. That day, she came home late as usual, entering the house while scrolling on her phone. When she saw me, she just said indifferently, "Aren't you sleeping yet?" I put the laptop down on the table and opened the message file. "Is there anything you want to tell me?" Elena glanced at the screen. For a second, I saw panic in her eyes. But then, like a professional actress, she quickly regained her composure. "What are you talking about?" I clenched my hands, trying to keep my voice calm. "About Antoine. About the fake marriage contract. About your plan to leave me when you find a better life." This time, she couldn't hide it anymore. Elena pursed her lips. Her eyes became colder. "Who told you this?" I laughed a bitter laugh. "It's funny. You don't deny it. You only care who told me. That's enough to know the truth." Elena suddenly got angry. "Lucas, you don't understand anything. How do you think the world works? Do you think love is enough? I've worked so many years to build my career, and I can't let anyone get in the way of that. Not even you." I looked at her for a long time, as if trying to find the image of the girl I once loved. But she was no longer there. I stood up, took the engagement ring off my hand and placed it on the table. "I understand, and I won't stand in your way anymore. This wedding will never happen." Elena rolled her eyes. "What are you doing?" I looked straight into her eyes. "I give you back your freedom, just what you want." She was stunned for a moment, then laughed mockingly. "Do you think you can find anyone better than me? Lucas, you are the best thing that has ever happened in my life. If I leave you, I will regret it." I shook my head slightly. "No, Elena. The best thing that ever happened in my life was realizing who you really were before it was too late." I left the apartment that night. I didn't turn back. The following days, I canceled all wedding plans. I called Elena's family to explain the reason. They were shocked, but no one defended her. Her mother even cried and said, "Lucas, I'm sorry. We didn't realize how much Elena had changed." As for Elena, she tries to control the situation. She kept texting me from apologizing, begging, to angry, cursing. She tried to get a refund from the wedding reservations, even going to the organizers to try to have the refund transferred to her account instead of mine. But the worst thing happens when Antoine leaves her too. The fake marriage contract no longer made sense when Antoine found a younger, more famous actor to work with. Elena lost everything. She was dropped from the movie that she put all her heart and soul into. She lost her online reputation when people gradually discovered that she was just an exploiter. She has no one left to rely on. Her friends in her circle only see her as a chess piece whose value has expired. I'm not gloating. I just feel relieved. I saved myself before I was submerged. And that's more important than anything. I used to think that after leaving Elena, I would feel empty, lost, even regretful. But no, I felt relieved. There's no denying that the pain is still there, but it's no longer suffocating me. Like a dark room with the windows sealed for many years. When I opened the door, light rushed in, air rushed in. I breathed freely for the first time in years. But even though I was out of Elena's life, she still hadn't really let me go. After I annulled the engagement, Elena completely collapsed. Antoine, the man she relied on, also left her when she found a younger, more promising actor. No fake marriages, no movie contracts, no fame. Elena lost everything. I heard from Matthew that she tried to return to the entertainment industry, but no one wanted to work with her anymore. The flashy friends who once praised her also disappeared. Directors and producers no longer considered her a potential choice when the scandal about the fake marriage contract was leaked. Fans on social networks gradually left because they realized she was just a fake person, trading everything for fame. But what I didn't expect was that Elena still hadn't given up on me. She texted me constantly, from apologizing, begging, to cursing me. "Lucas, I was wrong. Please give me a chance. I miss you. I miss the days we spent together. I'll never find anyone better than you." I don't answer. I was so tired. But she didn't stop there. One day, I walked out of the company after work and saw Elena waiting at the door. She looked haggard and tired, no longer as glamorous as before. "Lucas, we need to talk." I shook my head. "There's nothing more to say, Elena." But she held my hand, her eyes filled with tears. "I lost everything, but I realized the only thing that really matters is you. I will change. I promise." I looked at her for a long time, then gently removed my hand. "Elena, I don't regret betraying you. I only regret that things didn't go according to my plan. I'm no longer your choice. And you're no longer my choice either." She was stunned, as if she couldn't believe that I had really left her forever. I turned away, and that was the last time I saw Elena. After everything ended, I needed some time to rearrange my life. I moved to another apartment, a place with no memories of Elena. I focused on work, traveling alone, and reading more books. But most importantly, I allowed myself to open up again. And then I met Isabel again. Isabel used to be Elena's best friend before she changed. As Elena slowly falls into her glamorous world, Isabel is one of the few people who tries to pull her back. I remember the last time Isabel tried to talk to Elena. "Elena, you're losing yourself. Don't let fame change who you are." But Elena smirked and said, "You're just jealous because you'll never have what I have." After that, Isabel left Elena, but she still cared about me. After I called off the engagement, Isabel was the first person to text me asking if I was okay. We started talking more, meeting for coffee, and walking around the city. There's no rush. There's nothing forced. Just two people who were hurt, gradually finding comfort in each other. When I was with Isabel, I realized this was the kind of love I deserved. Isabel doesn't care about fame. She is not fake, does not live a virtual life, does not seek recognition from others. She didn't ask me to change to suit her. She loved me for who I was. I remember one evening when we were walking on the banks of the Seine. I asked Isabel, "Aren't you bored? My life isn't as glamorous as what Elena pursues." She just smiled slightly, then said, "Lucas, I don't need someone with hundreds of thousands of followers. I just need someone who can sit next to me, listen to me talk about my day, and make me laugh." And at that moment, I realized that real love is not flashy things, but the simplest things. 6 months later, Isabel moved in with me. We don't need to post pictures online to prove that we are happy. We don't need to brag about our relationship. We just need each other. A year later, I proposed to Isabel, not in a luxury restaurant, no romantic candlelight or violin orchestra. Just the two of us, in a small apartment, with a simple ring and a sincere saying, "I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want you in it." Isabel didn't cry like Elena did. She just smiled brightly, grabbed my hand and said, "Then I'll be there." Time passed, and I finally felt peace in my soul. No more stressful arguments. No more lonely evenings, even when you're with someone. No longer feel like I'm just a backup plan for someone. I thought I would never be able to truly love anyone again after Elena. But then Isabel arrived. No fuss, no drama, just slow, gentle, and true love. And while I was enjoying my new life, Elena was falling into the abyss she had created for herself. Isabel and I moved in together after a year of dating. My small apartment now had the warmth of a family, something that, even though I had lived with Elena for many years, I had never felt before. Isabel doesn't care about luxuries. She doesn't try to change me. She cherishes the little moments together instead of living to impress others. One evening, I was cooking dinner when Isabel called from the living room. "Lucas, I don't want to watch a movie tonight. Let's go out for a walk." I turned to look at her, hair slightly disheveled, wearing a loose sweater, eyes bright with excitement. Before, when I was with Elena, any plan had to be perfect, an expensive restaurant, nice seats, just the right lighting to take pictures. But Isabel just wanted to go for a walk. It's that simple. We wandered around the neighborhood, stopped by a small coffee shop, sat together and talked about random things, an old movie, an interesting story of the day. No phones, no photos, nothing to prove to the world. And that was the first time I felt true happiness. While I was having a new life, Elena was sinking into a series of consecutive mistakes. After I annulled the engagement, she lost everything, being dropped from the big movie she was trying to get. Antoine abandoned her because he found a younger actress to replace her. The entertainment industry turned their backs on her because no one wants to work with someone who only knows how to take advantage of others. From someone who confidently declared she would become a star, Elena is now just a forgotten name. Matthew, my old friend, was the first to tell me about her story. Lucas, do you know how Elena is now? I hesitated a bit, then shook my head. Matthew sighed. She's trying to get back on social media, but no one cares anymore. Her followers have plummeted, and people who once praised her now only leave mocking comments. I'm not at all gloating when I hear that. Even though Elena had hurt me deeply, I never wanted her to fall this way. But sadly, this is the consequence of wrong choices. One evening, while I was having dinner with Isabel, my phone rang. Elena. I blocked her number a long time ago, but this time, she called from an unknown number. I looked at Isabel, who nodded as if she understood that I needed to face this one last time. I picked up the phone. Lucas. Her voice was weak and shaky, lacking the same pride as before. I beg you, please talk to me. I didn't say anything, just listened. I've lost everything, Lucas. My friends, my career, everything. No one wants to help me. You're the only person I've ever trusted. I clenched my teeth, trying to control my emotions. Elena, I don't regret betraying you. I only regret that things didn't go according to my plan. She burst into tears. You're right. I was wrong, Lucas. But please, don't leave me like everyone else. I took a deep breath, then answered, Elena, you abandoned me a long time ago. I have nothing more to give you. I hung up, and that was the last time I heard her voice. I put down the phone and turned to Isabel. She didn't ask, didn't judge, just quietly held my hand. Are you okay? I looked at her, smiled. I've never been better. Because finally, I have truly stepped out of the darkness of the past. I no longer hate Elena. I no longer resent what she did. I simply don't care anymore. I have Isabel. I have a new life. A life where I don't have to prove anything to anyone. And that's all I need. Time has a strange way of healing everything. 2 years ago, I thought my world was falling apart when I discovered Elena's betrayal. But now, standing on the blue beach of Santorini, holding Isabel's hand, I know that what happened was necessary for me to find who I truly belong to. We didn't just find each other. We found peace. After all that had happened, Isabel and I decided to start a new chapter together. I left Paris and moved to a smaller city, Nice, a more peaceful place with beautiful beaches and a gentle pace of life. Isabel opens a small coffee shop where she can spend all day reading books and chatting with customers. I continue to work in the software industry, but now I no longer work like a robot. I spend more time enjoying life. The days with Isabel were not moments of explosive, intense passion like in the movies, but they were genuine, simple, and profound. We cooked together, not to have a perfect meal to post online, but to enjoy the moments together. We travel together, not to show off, but just because we want to explore the outside world together. We live together without having to run any race. One day, as Isabel and I were sitting on the balcony, looking out at the ocean, she turned to me and asked, "Have you ever thought if things hadn't happened like this, would we have met?" I smiled and squeezed her hand. Maybe not, but I don't care. What matters is that we're here now. After a year of living together, I knew that Isabel was the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I proposed to her, not with a grand performance, but just on a peaceful afternoon by the beach, while we were watching the sunset together. No flashy lights, no expensive diamond rings. Just a simple ring, a smile, and a question, "Do you want to spend the rest of your life with me?" Isabel didn't cry like Elena used to. She smiled brightly, grabbed my hand and said, "I always wanted that." We held a small wedding on a hill overlooking the ocean, with just family and a few close friends. There are no designer wedding dresses. There are no lavish locations. There are no guests who are strangers. Only people who truly love us come to bless the two of us. And it was the most beautiful wedding I could have dreamed of. I thought I had completely forgotten Elena, until one day, her name appeared in front of me again. Matthew sent me a link. Lucas, do you want to know how Elena is now? I hesitated for a moment, then clicked. Elena has lost everything. She cannot return to the entertainment industry. No director wants to work with an actor who has so much notoriety. She tried opening another social media channel, but no one was interested anymore. She was once famous, but the online world has no place for forgotten people. She returned to Paris, but no one welcomed her. People who were once her best friends now only see her as a lesson in failure. Rumor has it that she tried to contact Antoine, but he didn't even bother to reply to her messages. What about her family? They couldn't help either. Her father cannot forgive her for what she did, especially the way she betrayed the people who loved her the most. Her mother cried a lot, but finally had to let go, because Elena had pushed herself away from the family. Elena was now alone, trying to hold on to what was left, but there was no one left to hold her hand. I finished reading the article and didn't have any emotions. No gloating, dispiteous, just empty. Because eventually, I realized something important. Elena is no longer a part of my life. One day, while I was sitting at my desk, Isabel walked over and gently wrapped her arms around me from behind. What are you thinking? I turned back to look at her, smiling. I think I'm lucky. Isabel smiled softly, resting her head on my shoulder. Me too. We don't need the world to know that we are happy. We don't need thousands of followers to confirm our love has value. Because real love isn't about flashy things. It's in the simplest things, making coffee together in the morning, a gentle hug at the end of the day, a smile for no reason. And that's all I need. I used to think my first love would last forever. But then I realized that a love that does not come from sincerity will never last long. Elena is the past. Isabel is the present and the future. And I have never felt more certain about anything in my life. I took Isabel's hand, took a deep breath, and felt a peace I had never felt before. I have found my true love. And this is just the beginning of a truly happy life. Story 2, I Caught My Brother in Bed with My Fiancé is the title of this story. My family forgiven them and wanted to reunite us, so I disappeared. However, after a severe karma slammed them, they are now pleading. Hello everyone. Prior to the start of today's video, I need your assistance. One of the greatest ways you can help us out is to subscribe, since we've observed the channel is losing some of its popularity. It's simple, free, and helps us continue to provide you with amazing content. Your assistance is much appreciated. Together, let's continue to build this channel. Many thanks. Let's begin the video now. This is a temporary disclaimer for accounts. I never imagined myself to be among those men who share their life stories on Reddit, but here we are. A fair caution. This will take a lot of time. And sure, it's really screwed up. I, 25 guy, grew up in Colorado, and what appeared like your standard middle-class family from the outside. The dynamics in that house, however, were something else entirely. Mike, my 24-year-old brother, has been my mother's favorite child for a very long time. You know, those kids whose mother would find a way to commend them for their inventiveness, even if they could physically throw a fit on the carpet. That was Mike, when I started doing construction with my uncle in the summers at the age of 16. Mike was able to concentrate on his creative side, which essentially meant using drugs in the basement and attempting to make a YouTube career out of it. Mom was always prepared with these well-written justifications. Either he's sensitive or he's just discovering who he is. He needs time to process the situation. In the meanwhile, I needed to learn responsibility since I was becoming lazy if I didn't instantly jump up to assist with the dishes after returning home from a 12-hour job. Please understand that I was still, for the most part, an ordinary suburban child. I participated in high school football and advanced to the state championship game my senior year. If our quarterback hadn't injured his ankle in the third quarter, we would have won too. My dad and I worked on vehicles in the garage on the weekends. It was probably my only opportunity to avoid Mom's incessant comparisons between Mike and me. The intelligent one was my 22-year-old sister, Emma. Her nose was always in a book. She was Dad's favorite, but not in the strange way. Mom's favorite kid was Mike, more like they just understood each other better. While I worked on automobiles with him, she would assist him with crossword problems. You know, that was a terrific balance. I really started to catch up to Mike in college. Despite my mother's refusal to acknowledge it, I excelled in civil engineering at Colorado State, working on construction projects on the weekends to pay off my student debts. Mike, meantime, left community college after 2 semesters because, for whatever reason, the institution was too constrictive for his creative nature. Mom purchased a bullshit excuse that week. I was, however, making things work, had nice friends, received high marks, and shortly after graduation, got a good position at one of the larger commercial construction businesses. At first, the compensation wasn't great, but particularly in Colorado, I was earning a respectable salary for my age. In addition, I was able to work on real structures rather than spending my days cooped up behind a desk. Rachel and I met there. At the primary school adjacent to one of our construction locations, she was completing her student teaching experience. I used to see her sitting outdoors with her children during recess and at lunch breaks. I brought back a ball that some kids had rolled over to our place one day. We started conversing, and I must admit that I felt she was unusual. She was pursuing a teaching degree, loved children, came from a decent household, almost everything I believed I want. The fact that Mom adored her from the beginning should have been my first warning sign. Taking a look back, always asking her around for family gatherings, even while I was at the site working late, while I was working nonstop to create a future for us, she and Mike would speak about movies and music for hours on end. The fact that you and Mike get along so well is wonderful, Mom would say, grinning as if she had planned it herself. I proposed last December, after we had been dating for 3 years. Had everything arranged. We went on our first actual date at this location in the mountains, went to his knees in the snow. Everything. Yes, she replied, and I genuinely believed that I had everything worked out. In fact, we made a down payment on this lovely small home close to my parents' house. Rachel stated that she wanted to bring her children near relatives and that she hoped to have at least 3 children. Your mother will make a wonderful grandma. Fucking hell, she used to say. All the indicators were there, were they not? I can see all the warning signs I overlooked when I look back. When I was working on the weekends, she would always find a reason to visit my parents' house. How I was excluded from all of the inside jokes she and Mike shared. How their mother would occasionally make strange remarks about how similar they were, or how they simply clicked on a deeper level. But it's the way it is. That kind of betrayal from those closest to you is something you never want to think about. About a month before everything went south, I recall this one instance. My parents' house was where we were all eating dinner. Mike flawlessly completed Rachel's sentence as she related a narrative about something that occurred at school. As if it were the most normal thing in the world, they both laughed. Dad and Emma looked at each other across the table as Mom sat there grinning strangely and contentedly. But I didn't realize what it meant since I was too preoccupied with work. God, I was completely blind. This is where it all ends up. Shot. It was an April Tuesday. In particular, keep in mind that we were meant to pour concrete for the foundation of this new office building. However, the delivery timetable was messed up by the supplier. Since we couldn't accomplish anything until the next day, my foreman advised me to take the afternoon off. Normally, I would have stayed to finish off some papers, but I decided to surprise Rachel with lunch instead. She was constantly complaining about how much work one did. Mike's beat-up Jeep was in our driveway when we arrived home at approximately 1:00 p.m. That piece of shit automobile that Mom and Dad got him for his 20 honest birthday, even though he'd previously destroyed 2 prior vehicles. I should have realized something was wrong at that moment. He was meant to be at the music store, where he works part-time, his most recent career path which his mother was funding. However, I reasoned that he may also be on lunch. He's coming to tell Rachel about his most recent, outstanding business concept, or something. They had unlocked the front door. Upstairs music could be heard. The John Legend song, All of Me. The engagement song for Rachel and myself. Isn't that fucking ironic? Clothes were lying all over the stairs. Her instructor sweater, his tattered band t-shirt. You know how time slows down and everything gets quiet in movies? That's precisely what took place. I gazed at that sweatshirt while I stood there. I had given her that one for Christmas. Like a freaking neon sign alerting us to what was going on in our bedroom, it lay there on our stairs. What I saw when I opened the door will not be explained. You'll figure it out. This is the bit that truly bothers me, though. At first, they didn't even notice me. Just continued, as if they were living in a bubble. Mike really had the audacity to exclaim, "Oh shit, bro," when they finally noticed me. He dropped something like a drink over my couch. Oh God," Rachel sobbed as she began to gather covers around herself, like a broken record, again and over. Mike simply sat there, staring at me with a strange mixture of relief and, I think, remorse. He was almost relieved that it was now public knowledge. I remained silent. God knows I wanted to yell and punch, but I refrained. I simply turned around, went downstairs, and spent an hour or so sitting in my truck. Eventually, they both came out. Mike virtually rushing to his Jeep, Rachel in her robe, standing on our front porch. Her face was smeared with mascara. I walked back inside after waiting for Mike to go. For what length of time? I just asked for that. At first, she attempted to sidestep the subject. She continued saying that she didn't want to hurt me and that everything simply occurred. But I kept asking how long. She broke at last. 2 years. 2 years, for crying out loud. Very shortly after, I began working weekends in order to save money for her ring. I believed that by working more hours on Saturdays, I was constructing our future. Every time she stated she needed to work on lesson plans or mark papers, she was by his side. When she went to my parents' place to assist Mom with gardening, she was with him. You guessed it, yes. The worst thing, in fact, she made an effort to clarify herself. Sat on our couch there. The sofa? She told me how she had become fond of Mike over time and that it would be ideal for our future family. So I had spent 3 paychecks on it. How she and I never shared the same profound connection that others did via music and art. How she was in love with him yet still loved me. I informed her that she had till the end of the day to get her belongings and leave. She broke down once more, stating that she needed more time and that we should discuss this. I simply left, purchased new locks while driving to Home Depot. She was left by the time I returned. She had left a letter, though. Somewhere I still have it. She apologized with 5 pages of handwritten nonsense. How this was not something she anticipated. How Mike gave her a sense of understanding that I never gave her. I called my employer, took a couple days off, I told him. I changed all of my passwords throughout the course of the following 48 hours. Social networking, bank accounts, everything. Blocked both of their phone numbers. Emma told me afterward, which is the only way I even knew what occurred next. Rachel apparently walked directly to my parents' house, found my mother in the yard, and then broke down in tears and told everything. What is my mother's occupation? Give her a hug. Assures her that everything occurs for a purpose and that perhaps this is a good thing. Made her remain for supper as well. On the day she discovered my fiancé cheating with my brother, my mother prepared dinner for him. Mike most likely arrived after Rachel phoned him. I had a full speech prepared about how love simply happens and they didn't choose this. They wanted to inform me, but they were unsure of how, as if it were some fucking classic film about star-crossed lovers. Mom sat there nodding along. Emma rushed out as Dad simply gazed at his plate. Rachel first lived with her parents, but within a week she was staying at my parents' house every night in my brother's former room. And Mom simply accepted it, appeared really pleased about it. It was then discovered that she had been urging them on, telling Rachel how similar they were, and Mike how Rachel was more his type. The days that follow are somewhat of a haze. I recall Emma bringing pizza over and sitting with me while I cycled between feeling angry and feeling empty. She informed me that her mother had already begun discussing when things would calm down and how we would all eventually laugh about this. Yes, exactly. Rachel sent me an email that weekend requesting that we discuss dividing up our belongings. Take whatever you want, I said. In any case, I didn't want anything that made me think of her. That filthy couch was among the majority of the stuff that she grabbed, left me with an engagement ring and an empty flat. I'm still making payments. The real mind fucks began following the first discovery and Rachel's move out. Mom started this. I'm not sure what to name it. This is a mission to make everything normal. In passing, she would comment on how Mike and Rachel clicked and how she had always sensed a unique bond between them. If you began rewriting history to make their betrayal look like this lovely love tale that was destined to be, you would bring up all these memories of them together. Do you recall that 2-year-old music festival they attended together? My mother persuaded me not to go since I needed to concentrate on my work. Yes. Turns out that's when they initially hooked up. Mom was aware. she was aware, had been encouraged them to spend time together since Rachel brought out a nicer part of Mike. In the meantime, I was working 60-hour weeks in an attempt to accumulate money for a wedding and a house. I believed that we were constructing the future. The worst thing? Mom began to imply that I would be solely to blame for this. She would reply, "You were always so focused on work." Alternatively, Rachel wanted someone who could appreciate her artistic side. My transgression was putting forth a lot of effort to create a life rather than using marijuana in the basement and becoming like Mike. Then, in our Texas branch, this supervisor job became available. There was a noticeable improvement in compensation. To be honest, I needed a way out. I recently learned that Rachel's mother had assisted her in moving some of her belongings into Mike's room the day I learned about it. I had spent many hours studying in my old room while Mike was out having fun, the place where Rachel and I had mapped out our entire future. With their mothers okay, they were now sharing a bed. At first, I kept the job offer a secret from everyone, kept it to myself while I saw my family bend over themselves to satisfy the folks who'd wronged me. The only one who appeared to realize how screwed up everything was Emma, but even she was beginning to give in to pressure from her mother. One day, without looking into my eyes, she stated, "Perhaps we should try to understand their side." I realized then that I needed to go. But Thanksgiving came around before I could inform anyone about the move. It fucking happened, boy. When I arrived at my parents' house, Mike and Rachel were seated at the kitchen table, as if nothing had happened. Rachel seemed comfortable and at home in the sweater that I had given her for Christmas last year. Mom was grinning at them like if they were the fucking royal couple, and Mike had his arm wrapped around her chair. Everyone became silent as soon as I entered. You know that quiet that's so dense that a knife could cut through it? Yes, that. The mother then begins this prepared speech on forgiving one another and mending the family. Like a bobblehead on the dashboard, Dad simply sat there nodding. And Emma, God, Emma. She had these guilty eyes on me when she sat next to them. In fact, she was sitting with them. Mom dropped the bomb at that point. In an attempt to unite the families, she had invited Rachel's parents. Because Rachel and Mike were becoming serious. Are you becoming serious? As if it had been 2 years since they had fucked me behind my back. As if they hadn't ruined all of my plans for the future. I shattered when I saw Mike and Rachel seated at my parents' table, as if they owned the place. You know that moment when everything makes perfect sense? Like when you're intoxicated and then abruptly sober? That's what occurred. I left without saying anything. Mom was phoning me. She rehearsed some nonsense about mending and family, among other things. However, I simply continued to walk, went to McDonald's after getting into my pickup, consuming a Big Mac while seated on Thanksgiving. It sounds rather gloomy, doesn't it? Then be honest though, that depressing supper in my vehicle was preferable than seeing my family act as like nothing was wrong as they continue to blame the individuals who ruined my life. The only other folks who were depressed enough to be at McDonald's on Thanksgiving were sitting there with me. I began using my phone to create a list. I did everything I could to vanish. Not that witness protection goes away, but screw the whole thing. Go away. The Texas position was already lined up. My supervisor had been pleading with me to accept it. Down there, the business was growing rapidly, and they needed someone with expertise managing large-scale projects. I went to the bank the following morning, created a new account at a different bank, and moved all of the money from my joint accounts. Fortunately, Rachel and I never had time to put everything together. When I closed the accounts, the teller gave me this sly glance. She was extremely cautious to make sure everything was correctly documented, because it turned out that her ex had cleared out their joint account when he left. The phone came next. Did you know that every number you call or text may be seen by the principal account holder if you're on a family plan? Yes, my mother had been monitoring me with it for years. Switched to a new carrier. I got a new phone, a new number, and everything. Without connecting it to any of my previous accounts, the shop employee assisted me in moving all of my valuable belongings. Next was social media. However, I downloaded all of my pictures and essential texts before I erased everything. After that, I began blocking individuals. Everyone who had sided with them, including Mike, Rachel, their parents, friends, and relatives, unfriended Emma but left her unblocked. I also couldn't handle the fact that she was still undecided. I updated my email, established new social media profiles for work-related purposes under a different identity. The apartment was more challenging. My landlord was surprisingly kind, even though I still had 4 months left on my contract. It turned out that years before, he had experienced something similar with his brother. Permit me to terminate the lease with a penalty of 1 month. That evening, I began packing. Rachel left that couch behind, while everything Rachel and I had purchased together. I put it on Craigslist for free. Within an hour, a few college students arrived and got it. I phoned my supervisor and informed him I needed to start the Texas position sooner than January, which was the original plan. Fabricated a story about wanting to settle down before the holidays. He was thrilled, said that they needed assistance immediately. Through a man at work, I was able to get an apartment in Houston, paid the deposit that day, and electronically signed the lease. The following week was a haze of preparation and packing. I only disclosed my actions to 2 persons, my former foreman and my best friend from the building crew. I got help from them loading the U-Haul. No inquiries were made. I was even alerted by my foreman that my mother had been phoning the office to ask for me. The irony of it all. Mom continued attempting to set up this large family gathering to resolve the situation as I was packing. I kept leaving these voicemails about how we needed to recover together and how running away from difficulties doesn't help them. Rich, from the lady who had spent years escaping reality and acting as though her beloved golden kid was impervious to harm. December 15th, the day I departed, was freezing, like windows covered in frost. Breathe in frigid temperatures. In some way, it seemed right. At 4 a.m., I woke up. Before the sun rose, I loaded the final few boxes and headed off. Failed to leave a message. Didn't bid anyone farewell. I just jumped into my vehicle, attached the U-Haul to the back, and headed south. My phone was exploding with texts from unidentified relatives by the time I arrived in Kansas, so Mom must have realized something was up quite quickly. She had apparently visited my apartment and discovered it to be unoccupied. Began phoning as many people as she could, weeping because she was so frightened and I had left the family. I simply continued to drive. I received a friend request on Instagram from an unfamiliar account somewhere in Oklahoma. Mom was attempting to be cunning. It was a piece of work, her message. Why wouldn't you notify us about your move? Your family is us. We need you home for the holidays because we miss you. Together, we can resolve this. The most fulfilling message I've ever written was my response. There's only one boy remaining. I no longer belong to their family. I continued driving after blocking her new account. That night hit Texas. I was too exhausted to handle the apartment, so I checked into a hotel, staring up at the ceiling while lying in that bland motel room. And what do you know? I slept through the night for the first time in months. No nightmares of tension. Don't wake up in a rage, just tranquility. Later, I learned that when my mother saw my message, she completely lost it, began phoning every member of the family, and sobbing over her failure as a mother and her baby boy's reckless choices. Yes, no crap. Mom, you let her down. Not the way you think, though. I was really in Texas at the time, establishing a respectable life for myself. Within 3 months, I was promoted to project manager. It turns out that you can concentrate on your work when you're not juggling your family's incessant turmoil. Since artists don't care about material possessions, I bought myself a new F-150. The model Mike had always desired, but couldn't afford. Began teaching me at this neighborhood gym. I finally slept through the night without waking up with the need to smash walls because I realized I needed a healthy approach to cope with all the rage. Then it took place. I received the call on a Wednesday in January. My phone buzzed while I was on the job site going over plans with my foreman. The number had a Colorado area code, but I didn't recognize it. I nearly didn't respond. I kind of regret doing so. My Aunt Susan was there, Mom's sister, the family's only sensible one. Since Aunt Susan seldom tears, the fact that she was sobbing raised suspicions right away. Stage 4 breast cancer was the diagnosis made for said mother. Terminal, 3 months to live. Less, perhaps. Mom was requesting me, I said. Previously, I wanted to make peace. After that call, I sat in my truck for an hour, looking at nothing. I gave my employer a call. I needed a few days, I told him. Scheduled a flight for the next morning to return to Colorado. I even brought up a fucking suit because, well, what the heck? I was thinking about my mother the entire way back. She was still my mother even if she had made a huge mess of the whole Mike and Rachel affair. began to recall all of the enjoyable moments. She's attending my football matches, preparing my favorite dishes when I was ill, showing me how to operate that vintage Subaru. I had persuaded myself that perhaps this was a sign by the time the plane touched down. Perhaps we might make the necessary corrections before it was too late, and I was brought up at the airport by Susan. Her refusal to look me in the eye should have alerted me to a problem. Mom was at home, he said, desired to see me immediately. I entered the residence, the home where I was raised. I hadn't been inside the house since Thanksgiving, and they were all there. Mom, Dad, Mike, Rachel, Emma, Rachel's parents too. No bed in the hospital, no medical supplies. Mom wears her favorite gardening sweater, looking as healthy as ever. The quiet was overwhelming. Mom burst into tears. She pretended to cry, the sort where she makes sure her tears are visible to everyone, claiming that in order to bring me home, she had to do something. How her family being split up was too much for her to handle. Holding hands, Mike and Rachel seemed both guilty and content, as if they believed that this would somehow make everything better. Have you ever seen the scene in a movie where the hero suddenly loses all emotion and everything becomes very clear? Yes, that took place. I took a close look at my mother and recognized her for who she truly was. This poisonous, cunning mother had spent my whole life supporting one son while ruining the other. You pretended to have cancer. They had to lean in to hear me since I spoke so softly. To get me to return, you pretended to have terminal cancer. Mom made an effort to defend it. Began discussing how a mother will stop at nothing to keep her family together, and how dire situations demand extreme actions. In fact, Rachel nodded as if this were a fair course of action. Mike only gazed at the ground, perhaps considering how he could use this as inspiration for his sarcastic poetry. At last, Dad spoke out, attempting to mediate the conflict as usual. Son, all your mother wants to do is make things right. Everyone here misses you. Now that Mike and Rachel are engaged, we must figure out how to get back together as a family. I lost it at that point, not in a violent way. I had moved on from that, simply burst up laughing, was unable to stop. My family was here, having deceived me in every manner imaginable. Who fucking lied about cancer? Sitting there with the expectation that I would just adopt their illusion. I took a look at each one in turn. What's hilarious is that, on the aircraft I did feel bad. I was reflecting on all the pleasant recollections. I wondered whether I had been too severe. However, I pointed around the space. Actually, this is a gift, because I now firmly believe that removing you all from my life was the proper decision. Mom began to cry, the ugly type that she normally keeps to herself since it spoils her makeup. I simply held up my hand, but Mike got up, presumably to try some brotherly nonsense. I just returned because I believed my mother was near death. Mom, congrats. Any possibility of ever being in a relationship with me again was just destroyed by you. Went out after turning around. I could hear them phoning me. Mom's sobs are becoming increasingly frantic. In fact, Rachel made an attempt to follow me, expressing empathy for my suffering. I simply continued to walk. Aunt Susan, who was sobbing this time, was waiting in her car. It turns out she was also manipulated by her mother. I informed her that I needed an intervention because I was suicidal, said that the only way to bring me home was to tell the cancer narrative. The quintessential mom turns everyone's feelings against them. To the airport, I took an Uber, returned to Texas on the subsequent trip. I have blocked all Colorado numbers on my phone, with the exception of Aunt Susan's. After revealing her mother's deception, she had earned the right to remain in contact. I put myself into starting my new life in Texas after the cancer stunt. I began dating Sarah, a fantastic woman I met at my mixed martial arts gym. She was quite different from Rachel, autonomous, simple, no desire to engage in family politics. Through common acquaintances, she had heard tidbits of my tale, but she had never encouraged me to share it. Simply accept me for who I am. Everything with Sarah, even baggage, was going smoothly. A trauma nurse was what she did, worked nonstop, hours, just like me. Recognized the importance of diligence in a manner that Rachel did not. By Christmas, we had been together for about a year. I received an invitation from her family to stay in Dallas for the holidays. Good people, normal family. Her father, a former firefighter, really wanted to know about my building endeavors. Her mother refused to accept no and persisted in attempting to give me more ham. It was wholesome. The actual Christmas Eve was perfect. This amazing fettuccine Alfredo was a family tradition created by Sarah's mother. We gave and received presents. For the first time in years, I watched vintage Christmas films. I had the impression that I might be able to resume a regular family life. I ought to have been more aware. It was also a wonderful start to Christmas morning. More presents, more food, more of the cozy sense of family that I had been lacking. Then Sarah's mother said they had some family friends coming over for supper. At first, I didn't give it much thought, even assisted in setting up more dining room seats. It was about 4 p.m. when the doorbell rang. I heard them before I saw them, my mother's voice attempting to sound kind and worried, like she often did when she had a crowd. Sarah's mother went to answer it. I felt chilly all over. They were there when I turned around, like a messed up Christmas card. Mom, Dad, Emma, Mike, and Rachel are standing at the doorway. I noticed Sarah's face at that moment. I'm not shocked, simply guilty. She was aware that she had contributed to its planning. She had been speaking to my mother for months, it turned out. She felt she was helping by organizing this intervention. My mother had told her stories about how they were all concerned about me, how I was avoiding my issues, and how I needed family support in order to recover. Mom went about her daily business. They made a mistake. However, your behavior is also inappropriate. Like somehow me leaving town was equal to my brother fucking my fiancé for 2 years. Dad said that Mike had endured enough suffering as a result of his faults, and that enough was enough. I needed to move on, but he retained the family and got the girl. Wearing this elegant new engagement ring, Rachel was there to clasp Mike's hand. I'm very certain that the funds from the sale of my previous home were used to purchase it. After I departed, their mother persuaded them to invest in it together. She made an attempt to talk, most likely to offer some deep understanding of how love operates in enigmatic ways or whatever nonsense they had practiced. I interrupted her. Find your own way home, he replied, glancing directly at Sarah. Later, I'll get my belongings. Easy, keep quiet. Final. And immediately, everyone began to speak. Sarah is in tears. Mom gasps in a dramatic manner. Mike was attempting to act as if he had any peacemaking skills. Just when I was about to go, Mom took hold of my arm and began to talk about how important their family name was, and how she had raised me better than this. At that point, I informed her that I had previously changed my last name some months prior. You'd think I'd killed her when I told her. In fact, she sobbed over history and family lineage as she fell into a chair. The return trip to Houston was a long and peaceful journey. I had plenty of time to reflect on how incredibly foolish I had been, reestablishing trust. That evening, Sarah made around 50 phone calls, voicemails stating that she was only attempting to assist, how she believed that by uniting everyone, everything would be resolved. Traditional manipulation, victim. Like she played everyone else, my mother had played her. Returned to my flat at approximately 3 in the morning, examined the Christmas tree that Sarah and I had decorated. All of the gifts are still wrapped. Put all of the gifts she had given me in the previous year in a box. The spare key was added. The toothbrush from my bathroom was left behind by her. Everything. Before she returned from Dallas the next morning, I dropped everything off at her house. The worst thing. Later on, it was discovered that months had been spent planning this entire Christmas intervention. Sarah had been keeping my mom updated on everything, including my job, my friends, and whether or not I was seeing anybody else. She would even assist them in locating my new address, which I had concealed in order to prevent this sort of situation. Mom had done a great job portraying Sarah by displaying old family pictures, told tales of our former closeness, painted this image of a worried mother attempting to support her kid in need, and Sarah's desire to be the one to make things better. It's hook, line, and sinker. A year or so later, my business was awarded a sizable contract to demolish and rebuild a number of Colorado foreclosures. Whose home was on that list, you ask? Yes, my parents' house. In order to finance Mike and Rachel's ideal wedding, the mother had taken out a second mortgage. It was the same house where she had planned her little tricks and hosted all those family dinners. She had opened my former room to my brother and ex. I offered to supervise its demolition myself. On a Tuesday morning, I drove up there and saw them demolish every single brick. Halfway through, Mom arrived, most likely a neighbor's tip. She appeared elderly. It's worn down, not simply older, discovered later. She currently works as a greeter at Walmart. Her first full-time employment in 30 years. I suppose karma has a sense of humor, but that's only the beginning. I received all the details of everyone's spectacular collapse from Emma, who at last had the courage to apologize. After 6 months, Mike and Rachel's idyllic marriage fell apart. As it happens, Rachel has a personality. She enjoys cheating. She was caught with Mike's closest buddy, the same man who served as his wedding best man. Here's the real kicker, though. She is carrying his child. The kid of his former best buddy is being carried by the same Rachel, who was unable to conceive. It wasn't adequately handled by Mike. Began to drink excessively. After often arriving at the music store intoxicated, he lost his job. He now writes angsty songs about betrayal while residing in their dingy rental flat in his mother's basement. He doesn't see the irony at all. At last, Mom and Dad split up. As it turns out, Mom had been fabricating financial statements for years by using credit cards in Dad's name to support Mike's endeavors. When they attempted to refinance the house and the bank excluded them, the wedding father learned about it. He currently resides with my aunt. Began treatment at last and made a phone call to express regret. Said that years ago, he ought to have confronted his mother. Rachel's time as a teacher is ended. Her history of having affairs with her pupils' family became known. Yes, Mike wasn't the first, it turns out. And now, no school system will deal with her. She lives in a dilapidated apartment building with her new baby daddy and works at a call center. Her parents won't even talk to her anymore, despite their understanding when she followed her heart with Mike. Actually, I'm having a fairly fantastic life. About a year ago, I met this incredible woman named Molly in the grocery store. She is not at all like Sarah or Rachel. She is straightforward, truthful, and genuinely moral. She is expecting our first child, and we moved in together 6 months ago. She made it plain that she didn't want to speak to my family after learning about it. Before I could inquire, I even blocked them all on social media. Somehow, Mom learned about the baby. Along with this lengthy letter on family, legacy, and second chances, I received a package of my old baby belongings. Small-town gossip never goes away. I kept the baby things because it was mine. However, the letter was immediately thrown in the garbage. In an attempt to contact me, she even attempted making new social media profiles, talking about how much she missed her firstborn and how a kid needs their grandma to block all of them. Next month, Emma will tie the knot. She wants to make amends with her father. Both Mike and Mom, who were not involved, stated that they had been in treatment to work through their involvement in all of this. Dad realized how his apathy made everything possible, and Emma acknowledged that she was too weak to confront her mother at the time. Molly says she's not campaigning for them to be allowed back in, but perhaps it's time to think about it. She has read all the deceptive messages, seen all the screenshots, and is well aware of the situation. She promises to support my decision, but she also serves as a reminder that anybody can change if they put in the necessary effort. The word "if" is crucial, but here's the deal. It has been shockingly empty to see karma finally catch up with everyone. Seeing them all suffer makes me feel gratified, but I'm more relieved than anything else. I was relieved to get away. I'm glad I created my own life. I'm glad I ended the cycle. For those inquiring about Dad and Emma, I haven't made up my mind about attending the wedding yet. It takes longer for certain wounds to heal than others.